When people say these kids are softer, what are they referring to? Are they softer?
I don't know if kids have changed, but parents have changed. Prepare your kid for the path, not the path for your kid.
Kids look softer at times because it's like, hey, if you can't play at this school, we'll just go over to this school.
How do we develop toughness in our kids?
Sometimes you got to feel a little bit of pain to really learn that lesson.
Where do I let my kid fail? And it's okay to just let them, they're going to have to handle this on their own.
How hard can coaches push?
I think it's a little tougher to push sometimes. If you yell at my kid, am I going to get fired if I say something?
I think you can be really hard on a kid as a coach, as long as you tell them why.
As you go through your kid's journey, know that each kid's different. Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I'm Jeff, along with Britt and Brad. And first off, we are going to do a three-man today. I think a great topic that will probably spark a lot of conversation, which is what we want. But as we're filming this tonight, national championship.
Yeah, it's a big day.
Who do you got? Notre Dame, Ohio State.
Gosh, it seems like it's going to be Ohio State. I mean, it just seems like they're just on all, operating on all cylinders, and for the first time, utilizing all their potential that they've had all year. They're just so good.
Yeah, it feels like they're the most talented team in the country. Now, that doesn't always play out on the field, but
Notre Dame's got I think the best turnover margin or most takeaways in all of college this year, and I think that's what they're going to have to do tonight. They're going to have 2 or 3 big turnovers, but good for them. They got there.
Yeah. A lot of other stuff going on this weekend with in the world of baseball. A lot of people screaming about what the Dodgers are doing and what MLB's doing.
I told you I've already booked my doing TBS this year. We'll be doing the NLCS, and I'm like, I think I'll be in LA mid-October if y'all need me.
Dude, it's crazy.
It's incredible, but what do you do? I mean, I think they're going to be at a $375 million payroll right now, and who knows? They might add to it.
Well, even that's artificial because of all the deferred stuff.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm saying.
It was crazy.
You know what? They're doing it, so what are you going to do? There's no limit to it.
You have to wonder, like, if you're the Mets and you just spent $700 million on one player, and when you look at the two teams, you don't have a chance on paper.
Yeah, but I will tell you this. We always say on paper because – the Dodgers have been loaded now for, 12, 13 years. And some people don't count their COVID World Series.
They've won 1.5.
1.5 World Series in 12, 13 years. But I will tell you, this looks to be their strongest team, no doubt.
Their pitching.
If you look at their bullpen, I think
their
bullpen, you have 7 guys that all guys could be high leverage relievers, which is scary.
It's sick.
Do you think, I mean, I know the commissioner's a whole nother subject, but do you think the deferred stuff, you think that's ever going to there's going to be something that comes out and say you can't do this? Because it's a recent thing, right?
Or whoever has the team in 12, 13 years, they're going to be very bad.
Yeah.
One of the two. Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen. There's always talk about putting a cap on things. But you know what? If you have these rules, Dodgers necessarily aren't breaking them.
They're just taking advantage of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We're about a month away from spring training, a little actually less now. So
you just hope that you look at the NBA, which ratings are just going in the crapper.
Yeah.
And
what? You get the same teams, that tends to happen.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen it. I think, NBA knows LeBron and Curry have been their guys, and it's like, shoot, we got to start developing more guys.
Yeah.
And, I think the MLB has a little more parity, but, if your team's like the Pirates and them, you're sitting here going, do we even have a chance?
Yeah.
Yeah. But with that being said, I do think today's topic is something that we've talked about doing now for, a month and a half or 2. So I'll let you kind of talk about it.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic. It's interesting from a sports standpoint, but I mean, this is a topic that goes beyond sports. People talk about a lot, and I don't know what we're going to title it when it exactly comes out, but right now we're calling it, are we raising kids that are too soft? Big topic. And one of the reasons it's a big topic is at the moment is because there've been some things in the media from a sports standpoint that have come out. UCLA's coach Cronin recently came out with some comments, and in fact,
Came out hot.
Yeah, before we talk about it, let's just play those comments.
Yeah.
We're soft, we're too soft to play hard enough. Even in the crucials, you can't get an offensive rebound. So don't tell me you want to win. Just don't tell me you want to win. You won't start the game. Tyler Bilodeau gave up 12 points. 2 screens, he didn't say a word, 3s, and then he got dunked on 3 times.
You obviously came back and took the lead. Do you feel like ran out of energy?
I have to run on the court to get guys to play hard. It's crazy, and it's every day. I'm tired of it. It's every day. I have the most energy of anybody at practice every day. I'm upset with everybody in that locker room, my assistant coaches and my players. I don't need to do anything else. I almost got 500 wins. So what the truth of it is, Ben, it's really hard to coach people that are delusional. The hungry dog gets the bone. We got guys that think they're way better than they are. They're nice kids. They're completely delusional about who they are. And the team that's mind is on the right stuff and hungry to get a win in conference play is the team that's probably going to win. So right now, if this wasn't the humble pie they needed, I don't know. But why wasn't the Nebraska game? So I don't know. To answer your question, we'll see.
Coach, you said you're the toughest and the most motivated guy in the room, and you said you can't be that. What do you feel like it's going to take for guys to get motivated and inspired to play hard?
You look young to me. You ever seen The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
Some guys need to go see The Wizard.
So what do you think? What's your take on that?
Well, that's coming out and calling out everybody. I will tell you that. But I will say I think there's a time and a place for it. I don't mind you calling out a team. You start calling out individuals, I personally don't like it between us. I don't. Even if a guy's making $35 million, I don't think you call out individual. Now, you call them in the locker room, you want to blast them in your office. I'm great with that. But I also see the other side that's like, hey, you're making money now. You're doing this stuff. Like you got to be held to a higher standard than just you're on a college scholarship. We're paying you. We're employing you.
Yeah, I think it obviously wasn't. It's something that's been building up. You could tell with him. It wasn't just a bad performance against Michigan. I think he just kind of was railing against the system, but it's a system that he bought into. I mean, he recruited these kids. He agreed to still coach college basketball in the new world that it is, which it's absolutely off the tracks. All college sports is in terms of what they want to do, and I do think. I think he just kind of lost. I don't, we can talk about the content of what he said, but I think the way he said it or the approach he took was wrong. Like you said, do it in the locker room. You can do it in private. You can say the exact same thing that you want to say to your players. You're not bought in. I mean, that's what. If you read between the lines, I think he felt like they were being disloyal. They weren't trying for him, and I think he's also seeing the fact in the transactional world of college athletics right now, it's funny. The coaches who could leave at any time are upset that the players now can leave at any time.
Yep.
But again, whether you agree or disagree on the content of what he said, and we'll talk about all that, you don't do it in public.
Yeah.
You don't do it. You don't throw. You take. It's like we talk about the quarterback. You throw an incompletion. Hey, it's my bad. You take the blame. If you're the quarterback, if you're the head coach, if you're the captain, you always take the heat yourself, and then you deal with anything else in private.
Or like I said, though, I don't mind you calling out the team a little bit sometimes. I've seen plenty of great coaches do that. But when you start naming individuals,
Yeah.
that's where, man, you lose your team, you lose certain players.
Even at the pro level, you played for a guy who never did that,
Dude,
Bobby Cox.
Bobby Cox would, we heard him go in his office numerous times and yell things that you can't repeat about certain guys, myself included at times.
Yeah.
But then he'd walk out in the locker room, come on, boys, let's get him tomorrow. Never let you see it. And, you know, it's why he was a great manager.
Yeah, never gave it to the media.
No, never took the blame. I always say,
Yeah.
you know, we had guys miss signs all the time, and Bobby would cover for him. I should have hit and run there, you know, when maybe he called it and the guy didn't see it.
Right.
He just always took it, and this was an interesting way to go about it. But I think you're going to start seeing more coaches get fed up with the system. But I do love what you said, that the coaches that get mad now are the ones that they could leave at any time, right? So it's kind of like it's blowing back in their face a little bit.
Yeah, well, we wanted to talk about this today because of that. I mean, that made it kind of current. But, you know, I think it's true. It's a truism that every generation, we tend to look back at the next generation or look ahead at the next generation and say, they don't work as hard as we do. I mean, our parents said it about us. You know, we now are looking at this generation and saying, oh, they're snowflakes and they're softer and so on and so forth. And so I think today we want to explore that a little bit and talk about what does softer mean? Are they softer? If they are, why are they softer? What's our role in that as parents? And what do we really want to build into our kids? And then how do we do it? So let's just start from the top and talk a little bit about when people say these kids are softer, what are they referring to?
Well, I told y'all, I think there's a little bit of truth to both these statements.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe kids are softer. I find myself not being, to be honest with you, as hard on my kids as my dad was on us.
Yeah.
There are times like when my dad made a threat, if you didn't do it, dude, there was no second chance. And I find myself with my kids sometimes, you know, I'm giving you one more chance, you know, and it was like, so do we give them more rope? Do we give them more leeway doing this? I will tell you, though, I've told you this, I think there's more options today.
Yeah.
I think kids look softer at times because it's like, hey, you know, if you can't play at this school, we'll just go over to this school. Where when we were growing up, and it, you know, y'all obviously a little bit older, but even with your kids, you didn't give them the option to just leave and go to another school.
No.
Like I was in this community and that's where I was going. If I didn't make the team, deal with it. Go find out another sport. Now kids have abilities to go, if they don't like a situation, I can go get in a better situation quicker.
I think it's I don't know if kids have changed, but parents have changed. And that's I'm stealing that from somebody else. That's not an original Brad Williams quote. I mean, I can
Write
claim
that
it,
down.
Third person.
make a T-shirt of it. But I think I don't think kids are softer. I think there's the parents and I'm older than you. I'm not as old as Britt, obviously. But
We know.
Our parents did not, but our parents weren't as engaged. You know, and just like their parents were even less engaged probably in our youth sports journey. You know, I mean, my dad was a college coach, right? But he was worried about his job, and I you know, there wasn't like, you know, we're going to put you in the best situation that you succeed.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
this is where we moved.
This is your
This
situation.
is the school district.
Figure it out.
If you got a coach that's verbally abusive, you know, I mean, they weren't as engaged. You know, they were there, they were supportive. I had great parents, but not like I am, and not like parents today that are sitting there going, okay, and I forget what the phrases from our old school, Britt, but talking about, you know, prepare your kid for the path, not the path for your kid.
Yeah.
And I think so many parents are trying to prepare the path for the kid to give their best, and it's a genuine love of their kid, to give their kid the best shot at success. I think in that respect, kids are softer because the parents are out there trying to make it as easy as possible for them to succeed, right? And there's more money out there today. I'm talking about the youth level, not when we get to high school. High school too, because we just had one of our best athletes transfer because the parents want a better opportunity for them in a certain sport. But I don't think kids are softer in one respect, and I'm stealing this from Britt, but like what they have to go through in their youth sports journey is harder than what we had to go through from a system standpoint.
Yep.
You know, and it's so much more pressure with social media, with the way the tournaments are set up, the club teams that travel. I think they have to have thicker skin because it just seems to be, you know, like what you did at Mountain Park growing up. yeah, I mean, you felt, I'm sure if it was a championship game, you felt some pressure, but not like you would have if you were playing at, a elite tournament, at 12U at Lake Point, that you feel like all the eyes are on you. It's just a different world.
But that's where, too, I think some of these parents and some of these coaches build up these tournaments way too much to these kids, and they're doing them a disservice, instead of, hey, we're going to play a tournament this weekend. Let's have some fun and do a great job. It's like, hey, this tournament leads to this tournament, and at the end of the day, sometimes you want to say, no, $5,000 leads to that tournament.
Yeah.
But, I do agree with your statement with that I just, again, I think kids have a lot more options. Another thing is we talk about, like, the parents, they come to all the practices. That's something that's changed so much from 20 years
Engagement.
ago. Engagement, but
Sometimes unhealthy.
thank you. That's what I mean. Sometimes drop your kid, like Emma Kate's playing volleyball. She has practice on Monday nights tonight from 5:30 to 8. I'm going to drop her off at 5:30, and Katie will get there about 7:30, watch the last 30 minutes practice. But it's like, what good is it for us to sit there for 2.5 hours? And
What is the motivation? And I'm going to say this because I think I have some credibility. My kid played varsity baseball for 4 years. I did not come to one practice.
No.
And because I was like, what is the purpose of me coming to that practice? He knows I support him. I'm coming to the games. The coaches don't need to see me there. He's probably going to have more fun with his teammates with me not being there. He loves that environment. He loves his coaching. What is the purpose of me coming to that practice? Maybe I just want to sit out in pretty weather, but really I had other stuff to do, and it was better for him for me not to be there. So, like, what is the reason you're there?
I'm curious with that.
Yeah.
I go to high school football, baseball teams, and you'll see
every practice
3/4 the dads there, and I'm like, so you can ride your kid when they get home about maybe what they did or what they didn't do.
Yeah.
And that's where I think things have changed the most. Is, like you said, parents are way more engaged, but for what? For what purpose? And for is it for you? Is it for your kid? I don't know. When they're younger, I get why you stayed a 7-year-old, because your kid's 7. You don't want to leave them alone.
Yeah.
But when they start getting that 11, 12, 13, like, it's okay to drop your kid off at practice and come back and get them in 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you said something about, parents, are trying to help their kids succeed. And I think that's half of it. The other half of it is fears that parents have, that if we don't do this, then they're going to fail. If I don't rescue them in this, then they're going to fail. And it goes beyond sports. It goes into, they're not going to get into the school they need to get into if I let them, they left their project at home. I'm going to run it up to them. I'm not going to let them fail in that. I'm not saying that's a right or a wrong, but I think we as parents, this world is just, there's a lot more pressure that you can't get in here if you don't do this. And so letting my kid fail feels like it has bigger consequences today than it did in the past.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. I mean, and it probably doesn't.
It probably doesn't.
But it feels like it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we think about are our kids softer, let's talk a little bit about what is it we want to develop in our kids? Because the opposite of being soft is what? Resilience.
Yeah.
Right?
Toughness, grit.
Yeah. And we talk about that all the time. So how do we, I was talking to my daughter about this subject last week, and she said, you got to remember, we want our kids to be both tough, but we also do want them to be soft in some ways too. And one thing we have in this generation is kids are showing up more often saying, I'm struggling with this. And back in the day, kids didn't do that. Mm-hmm. So I think, how do we develop toughness in our kids, but not just be so hard on them that it damages them?
I think, again, it comes down to parenting. It comes down to, knowing your kid. I've got 6 kids. Some are tougher than others and describe tough means they seem to deal with pressure situations better than other ones. They seem to deal with failure better than other ones. They seem to have more resilience. And they were raised the same, I think. So, but I think that it's just well, I'll throw this out there. The big term, the thing that's the most prevalent term out there is in parenting right now and in childhood is anxiety. And so the question is, was it always there? Was anxiety always there, but there was no room for a kid to really say they're anxious? They just had to deal with it themselves in their own room, or is it better now that they're able to tell us that they're having anxiety or they're struggling with some kind of mental health issue? Or is society prompting it more by telling them they have anxiety? And so you have to, it's all the above as a parent to kind of go, yeah, I mean, I think there's legitimate anxiety out there, but for every kid I have to parent a little bit differently. And then there's that, you say, where do I let my kid fail? Do I let my kid fail? And that's, and when is it okay to kind of like step in, when it's okay to just let them, they're going to have to handle this on their own, and I think every kid's different. I've got a daughter that is a musical theater, which is just it's failure after failure after failure.
Yeah.
And she can handle it though. I mean, she can handle it. She bounces back. It's amazing. And she's had some success now lately, and she's different than my other kids. And whereas I don't call her every night going, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? But I've had other kids, that I probably need to do that more.
Yeah.
So resilience is probably a cheat code for life.
Yeah.
If you can develop
You
that.
can bounce back.
That's, I mean, it's like in everything, bouncing back after a loss, whether it's in sports, it's in business, it's in marriage. I mean, if that's a key to this thing. And so as a parent, how do you teach that?
I mean, we had Kirk Cousins on when we did our live event, and he talked about, his kids may be sitting on the end of the bench. They may not score. They may not whatever. But he said, the thing I want most for them to get out of sports is to become tough, is to become resilient. Another episode, we had Tim Elmore, and Tim talked about, as parents, we need to have high expectations for our kids. And to your point, that needs to be based on knowing our kids and what expectations should be, which can be different for different kids. But you have to couple that with high levels of support and belief. Mm-hmm. And, if your kid, and in my experience with my kids, I mean, there's times I had pretty high expectations for them to do things. And at times I did too much for them. One of my sons and I talked about it last night. But I also supported them really, really hard as much as I could, and tried to communicate to them, a high level of acceptance, so that there was trust. And I think within that realm, you can be tough and you can push if they know that you love them and they know that whether they succeed or fail, you're fine with them. But you have an expectation that they're going to give their all.
I think it's interesting you talk about Kirk Cousins because, he's obviously been on our podcast, and we all know what he went through this year with Michael Penix taking over, and I've had a chance to talk to him a few times. And, like he said, look at the opportunity to show his two boys what toughness means, what being a good teammate means, what doing this. And I don't know if y'all saw him. He was on ESPN on Saturday, and, I mean, did an unbelievable job. And I was texting him, telling him how good he was for the first time. And he had he was great. He was self-deprecating when he talked about how his son looked at him one time and said, so you play the same position as Patrick Mahomes?
That was great.
Y'all don't, but it's like, at the end of the day, you get chances to live it out in front of your kids.
That's a great point.
And so I think as parents sometimes too, when, I mean, y'all know this, we're moving right now and trying to unload a house doing this. You can imagine me and Katie, there's been numerous times we've wanted to butt heads, but it's like, the kids are watching this. You're trying to show them like, hey, we got this. We're going to get through this. We're moving this. We're moving. Like, there's times I think as parents, we have a chance to show our kids lessons that they are watching every single day. So I think, talking to Kirk a little bit about that's what he's saying. It's good for me. It's always easy for me to say, hey, you want your boys to develop toughness. Well, I've been a starting quarterback for 12 years. Then all of a sudden you go through what you went through this year, and for your boys to be able to see you live it out, it's like, man, what better way than to them see me be the same guy through tough times.
I think your kids, I think they get more out of seeing you struggle as a parent than seeing you succeed, or seeing you be. I can't tell you that. Maybe I put it a different way. I think seeing you be more human.
Yeah.
So like I think his sons, if he went and won the World Series, he went and won the Super Bowl this year.
Be tough to win the World Series.
It would be. But if he won the Super Bowl this year, yeah, that'd be an amazing memory for his boys. But to see him struggle, to see him be human, to see him, probably, suffer in some ways privately, they see that. But then to see him be resilient, to see him just be amazing, have a testimony and to show his faith, that's something that's going to last a lot longer for his legacy that his boys are going to remember after he's long gone. And that's something I think we all got to remember is letting our kids see us struggle and then hopefully seeing us persevere and be resilient.
Well, in recognizing, I'll pull out a Bible verse here, but in James, in the book of James, it talks about, trials is what produces endurance.
Yep.
And if we as parents, personally, we need to embrace that, but we also need to embrace it for our kids and teach them that and let them, resilience is a muscle. And if you don't exercise that muscle, if you don't ever have a chance to get in the gym and exercise that muscle, you never develop it.
Yeah.
So
great point.
So let me transition here. We're talking a ton about parents. Let's talk about coaches a little bit. And their ability to push. And that's who we started off talking about, coaches who are frustrated because kids aren't working hard enough, aren't doing enough. What do we think about as we talk to coaches? How hard can coaches push, and in what environment are they going to be most effective if they push?
Well, I think you got to understand how kids will respond. You got to know your team. I will tell you this. I think it's a little tougher to push sometimes as a coach these days because of just, if you yell at my kid, am I going to get fired if I say something? There's more of a slippery slope.
Right.
But then I also think that some of these coaches today, and we've talked about this, at the end of the day, it's like you want to tell them you still are an 11-year-old basketball coach or you're an 11-year-old softball coach. Like, we talk about Cronin at UCLA. Well, he's getting paid $8 million.
Right.
This is a bigger deal. He is a true coach.
Right.
You're a dad or a mom that's coaching to help out. So keep that in perspective. Like, you don't know everything. You don't, have all the answers. And so, but I do think coaches should push again in the things. Wasn't Dan Orlowski talked about pushing intangibles, push effort at practice, push attitude, being a good teammate. I think those are important things. Do not continue to push on how good you did sometimes, because I think that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I think that I think the best trait that a coach can have, or if it's a trait or a skill, is communication. I think I don't, and it is a struggle for so many coaches to be able to, and part of it's a generational thing, part of it's kids want to know the why. But I think you can be really hard on a kid as a coach. Now, I mean, obviously they have to be a little bit older, as long as you tell them why.
Yeah.
And then you also can tell the parents why.
Yeah.
Sean West, who we talk about, he's one of our baseball coaches. He actually, there's a kid that's a freshman that he's been really, really hard on in workouts. But he made sure to let me know, to let his dad know, hey, the reason I'm doing this is because this kid's going to be really good. And I also know this kid's got a really good head on his shoulders. But he just wanted the dad to know that, hey, if the kid comes home and says, man, Coach West was really hard on me today in the workouts, why?
Yeah.
And I think that's a simple thing you can do. And so many coaches don't either sit the kid aside and go, this is why you're not playing. You're not getting back on defense, or you're not running out the ground ball. Like that. These are the non-negotiables as a coach that we're going to play by, that our team's going to play by. And if I sit you, there's not any miscommunication. You know exactly why I'm sitting you. But I hear so many parents put so many different alternative motives that a coach sat their kid or didn't play their kid. And that's really on the coach for not explaining at the beginning of the season or in postseason meetings with those parents to say, hey, this is what your kid needs to do to play.
Yeah.
So that if they don't play, we talked about this.
Yeah,
So I just think, I don't have a problem with a coach being hard on a kid as long as they love them, as long as they develop trust in them, and as long as they communicate with those kids. Be hard on them for a reason. Effort, body language, being a bad teammate, not acknowledging a great pass, that kind of thing. If you don't acknowledge the assist, so stuff like that. But that's. I mean, maybe I went on a side note there, but that seems to me one of the biggest issues I see in coaching right now is not communicating with the parents.
No, I think that's a good one. We've heard many studies say that the old adage of because I said so doesn't work with this generation. But they just want to know why, and that doesn't mean you got to go into long explanations. But whether you're parenting or you're coaching, expressing the why, we can dig in our heels, but we know expressing the why to this generation works way better than.
And then if they don't understand it, give them a kick in the rear.
That's right.
Like I've already told you once, if you don't. But no, I do like that too. And I think too, coaches having a pulse on your kids. All the kids are different. I mean, I coach 11 girls in softball and I push each one in different ways. You got to know, hey, I can get on to that girl. If I get on to that girl, she goes in a shell and she's done. Yeah. I'd rather wait till practice, let it go, and there's some girls, I can get on them and it's going to bring out their greatness.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You have to do a good job. If you're going to coach, know like Dabo said that time when he came on, if you're going to coach, know what you're talking about and know what you're doing. And then if you are, get the best out of your kids. And that's, they're all not the same.
What kind of kid were you? Because I know for me, if a coach reamed me out, I was not going to respond well to that. That was not going to make me go, I'll show you.
I loved it.
Where you
I
did.
Needed it. I had a football coach, Flo, our football coach, would tell you the first 2 or 3 minutes in every game on Friday night, he would find a way to rip me a new one.
Really?
He's like, I'd almost come up with something if you did something, whatever. I remember state championship game, my junior year. It was stupid what I did, but I went and tried to get like a punt that was bouncing and rolling, and I got it. Luckily, the guy hit me. I fumbled it, went out of bounds. I remember rolling, and Coach Flo looked down at me, and he goes, "You're the smartest dumb kid I've ever met." And like just said that little quote, and he's like, "I knew that would set you off, and you were on your way." And so it was, But it was funny because I always wanted it from coaches. If my dad did it early in the game, I'd get pissed and I'd go the other way. I would almost try too hard and it wouldn't work well. And that's why my dad will tell you too, like he always corrected stuff with me after the game next day because he knew that if for some reason, just with our relationship, that if he said something, yelled out loud, it would set me off the wrong way. But if I had a coach do it, it was healthy.
But let me ask this. Coach Flo believed in you. Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, you knew it, didn't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was out there every play, every
You also
game.
knew you were, the best player out there.
You're probably leaning. Go finish with your point because
I think that whole idea. I mean, Billis talked about that with Coach K. He said, we knew, we had trust that he had our best in mind, and he could rip us a new one like nobody else could. But we knew it was because he wanted our best.
And you knew it wasn't every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like.
And this is not to take away anything you just said, Jeff, but you just said it though. You knew you weren't coming off the field, so it's a little different. And I probably was more like this of the one who's battling for a starting position.
Yeah.
Knowing that hey, I may lose my job or like I may get replaced, and so there's a lot less confidence.
Yeah.
And the coach still has the responsibility of every kid on the bench of telling them, hey, I believe in you and things like that. But it's one thing when you're the best guy on the field and the coach rips into you. He's not going to yank you. More than likely, he's not going to yank you. But
no, I get it.
I also do talk about parenting real quick, but I didn't have great relationships with my coaches. I wish my dad had pushed me harder. So I think that
I've heard
was
you
the
say
opposite.
that. Yeah.
And like my dad was really really good college athlete. His dad was really really hard on him. It was an unhealthy situation.
So he went the other way.
He went the other way. And I appreciate that. I appreciate because I'm not going to be like my dad, but I would be okay with him pushing me harder, and looking back, I was like, I wish you had been, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you got to do this, because you're going to miss it on this. And so, but yeah, but I do, and I think it's a generational thing. Maybe the reason parents today act way they do, it's because maybe something their parents did wrong that they felt that they want to correct.
I think that's a great point, Brad. I think back, I was a tennis player and, was planning to play in college. And in those days, the biggest tournament of the year was in Macon, Georgia. And I was responsible for getting, signing up, doing all that. They left it all on me. And this was going right before my senior year. I was on track to play. I didn't get my application in, and I missed that tournament, and I hung it up. That I missed I probably still could have played, but it really derailed things. And so as I approached my kids, I was like, I took over all of the signing up for tournaments and all of that kind of stuff. And it really, as I think about it, it was really out of fear that they might do the wrong thing and miss out. And I wasn't going to let that happen. And what I robbed them of is, having them have the responsibility to learn, and maybe they would have missed out on some stuff, but maybe they would have grown from that as well.
Well, and I think there's a good balance. Remember, we talk about it like that. Something like that, like an application, I'm okay with a parent helping out and being like, I want to make sure. But remember Chris Pronger, the great defenseman, hockey player, I love what he said sometime. My son's old enough that if you want me to take you to the gym at 7, I will drive you there.
Yeah.
You wake me up. I don't wake you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's teaching him. My 11-year-old, she's in 5th grade now. She likes doing her hair in the morning. We order an alarm clock, and I'll give her this. She's up at 6:30 every morning, and she does her hair. She gets ready. But I'm like, God, this is just teaching her little discipline.
Accountability.
Routines, accountability. Yeah.
It's funny. Like, embarrassingly, my wife and I were too involved in making sure that the stuff was laid out the night before, making sure that they had the Gatorade and stuff. But what we didn't do for any of our kids, we're not like their academic stuff. They have to own it.
Yeah.
They like all my kids prepare for the SATs themselves. All my kids studied by like they, every once in a while they ask, well, maybe because we weren't that smart, we weren't able to give them a lot of help in math and things like that. But all my kids did their college search themselves. They owned all of that. And all of my kids that I tell them, if you're not in the car by this time, you don't get your phone the next day. Like if you're late to get in the car and late to school, but we were more involved in their extracurriculars. Academically, we were fine saying that, hey, you gotta, this is your journey. You got to apply to the colleges. You got to do all that. So you've got to, that's on you. And I don't know why. What not that, and they've all done really well academically. So it's not. It wasn't that we didn't think it was important, but we've let them kind of, have that deal with their own stuff academically. But when it came to extracurriculars, we were probably too involved.
6 kids too, man. That's a lot.
Yeah. Maybe it's just fatigue. It may just be out of sleep by the time they do their homework.
Well, as we're finishing up here, why don't we each give a final thought? And then I think after that too, we would love your feedback on this. Yeah. I would love to hear, because I think we can do another episode off this at some point.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
Of talking, but knowing what parents think too of if it's kids are softer now or if there's more options, if it's a combination. So, I'll just say this. My final thought would be, as you go through your kid's journey, know that each kid's different. Like you just talked about 6 kids, you're 4, I got 4. Like each kid is different on how you coach them, on how you teach them. So kind of know what drives them, but it's okay to let your kid fail some, and it's okay to watch them have to pick themselves back up off the floor and get better. Again, we're not saying don't get it to the point where it's crippling them and anxiety, this and that. But if you know your kid and your kid's strong and they can handle it, let them fail sometimes. And I think you'd be quite surprised how they bounce back.
I would really love to hear it from the kids. And I think we're going to have some stuff coming up in the future where we interview, recent college athletes. And I'd love to even talk to high school athletes and really get their perspective on what they think of the world calling them soft, or calling them softer than the generation before them, and hearing them talk about their experiences, because I can only speak as a parent, and as a sometime coach. But, I think, like I think Britt said earlier, I think kids are softer maybe just in general because the world is easier than it was, maybe when our grandparents were growing up. In terms of youth sports, maybe they're tougher. they could be tougher than we were because it's seems a lot more riding on it, even though it probably is a false reality.
Yeah, I guess I would say along those lines, in some respects, I think the world is actually tougher for kids today with social media, and here in Georgia, to even go to a state school, one of the big state schools is almost
Nearly
impossible to get in.
Yep.
So there's just a lot, and the pressures are just so much, and the pressure of a 9-year-old playing 100 baseball games a year, and it just not being, just as fun as it used to be. So there's a lot of great things. In a lot of ways, life is easier now than it used to be, but in a lot of ways it's harder. And we see that in mental health and all those types of things. So I guess I would say this. I think that we as parents need to, and we say this all the time, but we need to make sure that our sports goals support our parenting goals. And our parenting goals should be about raising healthy kids who are ready for the world, because most of them, almost none of them are going to play at the professional level.
Yep.
Jeff, you're a unicorn in the overall world of kids playing sports, and they're going to get knocked down, and we need to teach them, to be tough and get back at, what was it Kirk Cousins said? He said, tough. What did he say?
Tough times don't last. Tough men do.
Yeah, I love
Tough
that.
people
I
do.
love that, and that's what we need to teach our kids to do. But we also need to teach them to, as they're learning now, to, we need to pay attention to what's going on with them and to their emotions. And if they're really struggling with attitude on the field, then we need to give them a kick in the pants. But if that persists, there may be something deeper going on that we
And
as
you might wanna
parents need to
in.
dig in. That's right.
Yep.
So as you said, we'll talk a lot more about this.
Yeah,
'cause
give
this
us
is huge.
great feedback. I'd love to know what people think of this, because this is a very interesting topic, and I feel like it's with NIL, with everything else, it's starting to come to the forefront more, and people are talking about it. So hope you enjoy it, and let us know what you think.